The last new workflow we're going to create is a site workflow, and this is a new workflow type for SharePoint 2010. The list workflow and reusable workflows have to be connected to a specific list or library. Even the reusable one sits there waiting for you to hook it up to associate it. But a site workflow is independent of lists and libraries, and therefore we can use a site workflow for a workflow that really only has an initiation form with the user and then goes and does some work and it's done. Or a site workflow can cross libraries and lists. You could have a site workflow that you could point and have it look at various lists in your site. So let's see how to create a new site workflow. First, we'll need to give it a name, and what we're going to do in this particular workflow is we're going to make it really easy for a user to drop a suggestion off to a department. Probably too easy, they'll be suggesting all kinds of things, but this is the new employee suggestion box, and we want to be able to launch this from anywhere. We don't want people to have to go to a particular library, so we're just going to create this as an example. Gather suggestion info and email to the suggestion diva in our organization. Let's go ahead and say OK. Now, we don't have a regular library or list for this to hang off of, and so what we're going to do is we're actually going to grab some information and put that in initiation form parameters. I want to slide over here for just a second out of the editor and take a look, and as soon as I save this workflow, even with nothing in it, if we just save this, we'll have the ability then to go and to add some initiation form parameters that are going to be shown on a form that's going to create right down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that we want their suggestion text. And I could do a single line of text. Here's that short list of object types, but I'm going to give them multiple lines of text. And I'm not going to provide a default value. This is an interesting choice here, append changes to existing text, which would actually allow me, for example, to keep a running list. You'll see this in discussion items where one person adds more to the list item that's already there. And how many lines I want them to have to begin with, not a big deal. 6 sounds good. I'm going to go ahead and click Finish. And I might want to ask something else, like here's the suggestion. I might ask who they believe the suggestion should be sent to. So let's just go ahead and add another initiation field, and we'll say recipient. And notice that I could drive a choice menu out of here if I want to, but I'm just going to ask somebody who they think would best benefit from having this information. And there's no default value, and I'm just going to click Finish. So there are my 2 initiation form parameters. And I'm going to say, OK, these are like local variables, but it's also make sure that these variables are placed on the form. Let's go ahead and say OK and edit our workflow. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to send an email. And the action here will be send an email, email these users, and I'm going to email this to suggestions@twotreesoliveoil.com. While I'm working on this, I might want to copy myself because I'm testing. I love it when I can have my IT folks set up a couple of test accounts, test user 1, test user 2, that they put in mailboxes. I can then open those mailboxes in Outlook and make sure all these things are working right. And so we have an item coming in here with a new suggestion. And we might as well go ahead and put the username here. That would be the current user. New suggestion from current user. And then in my body of my document, I can say, you've received a new suggestion. And I can insert some information about that new suggestion. And my data source here would be in my workflow variables. So there's my suggestion text. Then I can say that the current user, we grabbed their information up here as well. So remember, all I have are variables in a context here. There's no form, there's no library, so you're pretty limited about the places you need to look in order to find what it is you're looking for. So the current user listed, we'll go grab our recipient. That again comes out of the variables as the best recipient for this suggestion. So the same kind of thing that we would do if we were grabbing information out of a task, if we were using collect info from user action, if we were taking data that had been submitted in a list and using it. But when we're creating this site workflow, we don't have a permanent resting place for any of this information. It's actually only existing during the time that the workflow is running. So let's go ahead and say, okay, that works well. I want to check my workflow for errors. There aren't any. Let's save and let's publish. And if I look at my workflows now, there's my new site workflow. Where will I find it in my site? Well, let's slide over to SharePoint. So let's go take a look and find our workflow. We'll actually find it under All Site Content. So we can either scroll to the bottom and go to All Site Content. It's probably the easiest way. And at the top of that list, here's our listing of site workflows. It's the only place you're going to find it right now. And there is my employee suggestion along with my description of it. I'm going to go ahead and click Employee Suggestion. Where's my suggestion text? And I'm going to say frozen yogurt on Thursdays. And I actually think that the person in charge of facilities would be best. I don't really know his name. Maybe it's Joe. I don't remember. Is Joe in facilities? Mary Ann? Can't remember. Somebody's in facilities. Well, let's go ahead and start this. Now, it takes a second for that workflow to process, and sometimes there's even more of a delay and the user will click a couple of times. But notice that our workflow has run and it's completed. It's all done. So if I were to go check my email, which I'm going to do, and I'm going to force it to go get my email for me. And there we go. New suggestion, frozen yogurt on Thursdays. The user listed facilities as the best recipient for this suggestion. So the data's no place but in this email, but it's great to have captured it. If I wish, I could actually copy this shortcut and I can put it somewhere else on my site to run this. It's a valid shortcut for me to use someplace else. Notice it goes immediately here to the form. So I don't have to direct my users to All Site Content to get to it. This is a really great way to create a simple form to grab something and then post a link on the home page in SharePoint or someplace specific that's going to be easy to get to. Real minimal effort to create a small workflow along with a form and application. So welcome to Site Workflows. Find a lot of great uses for these.